In the Tosfos Katan that we've been studying for a while now, Masechet Samid Beis, we're looking at the last of the middle-sized lines. V'im tomar hechis chayev adam asham al gzelo. A man stole from a Katan, took a shvua, and then the Gazlan confessed his sin and confessed that he had taken a shvua shah. So Tosfos asked the following question: well, what kind of shvua is appropriate here? The Katan cannot be mechayev a shvua. Darshinan be hagozel kama beperk shvuas hadayanim ki yitein ish v'ein nesinas Katan klum. So in two sugyas in Shas, we derive from the psukim of shvua that it's got to be an ish and not a Katan. And that gives us, from that we derive the principle, so how could it be that the Katan, who was the Nigzal, now generates a shvua on the Gazlan, and that sets into motion this whole Hishtalshalus in which the Gazlan took a shvua, and then he admitted that he had taken a false oath, and he has to bring a korban asham, and he has to pay care of the chom, whatever it says there in the parsha. I mean, there's no possibility that the Gazlan would have taken a shvua because the Katan cannot generate a shvua. Ein ishbayan al tainas Katan. V'yeshlomer dahani mili b'tanas kfir avodah. If there's a modu b'mixas shvua, then a Katan cannot generate a shvua. Aval al pi eid echad nishbayan. But if the claim of the Katan, which in and of itself could not generate a shvua, was supported by an eid echad, then the defendant has to take a shvua against the eid echad. So the shvua is generated not by the tain of the Katan, but by the eidus of the eid echad. Inami bekofetz v'nishpa. So he decided that he'll take the shvua on his own. Enoch inami, there was no chiv shvua, but he voluntarily took a shvua to try to impress the courts and the judges that he was telling the truth, but in reality, he was falsifying. So you may remember that we discussed in the past the issue of tainas Katan, whether if it's supported by an eid echad, it can generate a shvua. So just to review, we had on this point a machlokes between the Rambam and the Ravid. Just give me a second here. And this is in Perek Daled Mehilchas Gzela, Halacha Yud Gimel. The Rambam writes, "V'chedim chayesham eid echad bilvad, u'bal bayis toin shegazel hu kli zeh shebiyado, hala omer lakuach hu biyadi, o bechova gavisiv, o shali hayo pikadon hu etzlecha, harei zeh chayev lahachzer akli lebalav, v'lo shvua." So Reuven is claiming that Shimon is holding on to his kli and stole his kli from him. Shimon defends his claim, and he says, no, I bought it from him, or he owed it to me, or for a while I had deposited in his reshus, but it's mine. And the Rambam paskins, and we'll see why, that Shimon is going to have to return the kli to Reuven. Shimon, the defendant, will have to return the kli to Reuven, the plaintiff. Why? She'ilu hayasham shnei edim, because there was one aid that saw Shimon go into the house of Reuven and walk out with a kli. And if there had been two edim, then Shimon would have to pay and return the kli. Right? Or prove that he bought it. But if he doesn't have any proof of sale, of purchase, then he has to return the kli because they're two edim. The achshav, but now, ein sham el eid echad. There's only one aid that says we saw him go into the house of Reuven and come out with the kli. And therefore, chayav shvua, that aid echad generates a chayav shvua. And what shvua would the defendant take in this case? He would have to say that he didn't go into Reuven's house, but that's not true. He did go into Reuven's house, and he admits it. He's just saying he took that which was his. So therefore, any yochel ishava, he doesn't have the possibility of taking a shvua, she'eno makish as a aid, because he's not contradicting the aid. The aid is testifying that he went into the house of Reuven and came out with a kli, and he, the defendant, admits that that's true. The aid is telling us the truth, just that what I took out was mine. The law is that if you have a chiyuv shvua and you can't take the shvua because you're not able to be makdish the aid, then you have to pay. But if he denies the whole story and it's the word of the eid echad against his word, I never took anything out of his house. He's claiming he never went into the house. The aid is saying, I saw you go into the house and come out with a kli, so he has to take a shvur to be machish the aid. The Rambam says the following: This Rambam is a pellet. Right, so the Baal Bayis himself, he's not aware of whether or not, in fact, Shimon went into his house and came out with a kli. So therefore, with regard to the claim of Reuven against Shimon, that you went into my house and took out a kli, Reuven is a taina shema. He doesn't know. He's not certain. Is eich yesh kein tainas bori kidei sheyeh zeh mechuyev shvua ve'eno yochel lishav mishalim. So the Ravid says that we need a tainas bori, a tainas vadai, which in this case, the Baal Bayis, we call him the plaintiff, the Tovea, he doesn't have any sort of tainas bori because he doesn't know that, he never saw that Shimon went into his house and took out a kli. So he wants to force Shimon to take a shvua that I didn't go into your house. But you don't have a tainas bari against Shimon's counter argument. Shimon is saying, I never went into your house. I never took a kli from your house. And Reuven doesn't know one way or the other. So you see clearly that the Rambam holds that even in a case of tainas shema, the eid echad nevertheless generates a shvua. And the bottom line is that the Ravid and the Rambam are arguing about a very fundamental point. Can the eid echad, independent of the taina of the plaintiff, be machayev a shvua? The Rambam says yes. The eid echad himself is machayev the shvua. And now we have to ask whether the defendant could take that shvua or not take that shvua. Is he contradicting the eid or not? The Ravid, on the other hand, says no. Eid echad independently cannot be mechayev shvua. Eid echad can only support the taina, and the taina generates the shvua. And in the case of shema, a taina shema cannot generate a shvua. Now, another nafkamina between the Rambam and the Ravid would be the case of a Katan. If a Katan is a plaintiff suing the defendant, would the defendant have to take a shvua? The Katan himself cannot be mechayev shvua because ein nishban al tainas Katan. but the Katan now invokes the support of an Eid Echad. And therefore, when the Eid Echad supports the position or the claim of the Katan, then according to the Rambam, there would be a Chiyuv Shvua here because the Eid Echad, independent of the Taina, generates a Shvua. The Ravid, on the other hand, says the Eid Echad itself does not generate the Shvua, he just supports the Taina, and it's the Taina that generates the Shvua. But in the case of a Katan, he doesn't have a Taina to generate a Shvua. So that would be a second nafkamina between the Rambam and the Ravid. Now, the Rambam Shita is really what we saw here in Tosfos in the first answer. That how could it be that the Parsha of Shvuas Sheker with the Korban Asham and the Keren V'chomish, how could that apply in the case where the Gazlan stole from a Katan? There's no Tvias Katan. The Tainus Katan could not generate a Shvua. So how can you tell me that the Gazlan took a Shvua Sheker and therefore he has to pay Keren V'chomish and bring a Korban Asham? Ein Ishban al Tainus Katan. And Tosfos answers, because of the Eid Echad that supports the Katan. So you see from Tosfos that it's not that the Eid Echad supporting the Taina and the Taina is Machayev the Shvua, but rather that the Eid Echad independent of the Taina is Machayev the Shvua. Hence, in the case of Katan, Tosfos says, if the Eid Echad is supporting the claim of the Katan, that would generate a Chiyuv Shvua, and the plaintiff has to take a Shvua. If he takes a false oath and then confesses, then he brings a Korban Asham. Again, I wouldn't ask a kash on the Ravid because Tosfos gives a second answer of Kofatz V'nishba. I mean, certainly that would be a valid answer according to the Ravid sheet. The Ravid would reject the first answer, Tosfos, because just like in the Tainus Shema, the Ravid claims the Eid Echad would not be Machayev Shvua, so too in the Tainus Katan, the Eid Echad could not be Machayev Shvua. But he has the luxury and the fallback position of the second answer of Tosfos. Now the problem here is that there's a steer in the Rambam, because we've been focused on the Rambam in Perek Daled Milchus Gzela. But if we look in the Rambam Hilchos Toin V'Nitan, Perek Hey Halacha Tes, we have a whole different perspective here. The Rambam writes, Ein nishban al tainas chayrit shota v'kata. Echad abo b'tainas atzmo, o b'tainas aviv, l'fi shezeh hamiktzah shahoda bo l'katan, eino el kamesh v'aveda. V'chenim kafar, bakol, uba eid echad v'heid l'katan, eino nishba, shezeh eid echad v'ein sham tovea, shetvias katan eino tvia gemura. I mean, the Rambam is really outspoken here that the Eid Echad, even though he's supporting the Tviyah of the Katan, but a Katan doesn't have the capacity of putting forth a legal halachic Tviyah, and it cannot generate a Chiyuv Shvua. Nim says, Omer Katan she'omer legadol, mana li biyadcha, o Abba hoyelo biyadcha, Allah Omer ein lecha biyadai el chamishim, o ein lecha biyadai klum, v'ed echad made sheyesh lo, harei ze poter mishvuas haTorah. So we see that the Rambam is holding it. It's the taina that generates the chiyuv shvua. Tainus katan is not a taina, and therefore, even though there's an eid echad to testify, he's not chayav shvua. But the Rambam in Perek Daled Milchus Gzeila that we saw earlier says that there's a shvua on a claim, or shall we call it a testimony of eid echad. And the Gazlan, the so-called Gazlan, the Nitba, has to take a shvua against the eid echad, even though the Nigzal is a Katan. Shall we say even if the Tovea is a Shema? Let's put it that way. So let me read to you a paragraph here, and we'll see if we can take it apart. He says, Vehine, Harama Posak Mefurash, Sheshvuas Eid Echad Al Yidei Taina Hiba. I have an explicit Rambam in Hilchos Shvuos. The Rambam is outspoken, committed to the fact that a Shvuas Eid Echad comes through a Taina. And this is in the 11th chapter of Hilchos Shvuos, Halacha Hey. Shlosha Minei Shvuos Hey. Shechayovim Bahem Min HaTorah Ve'eluhem. The Rambam enumerates 3 different categories of Shvuah Min HaTorah. The first is Moda B'Miktsas. Misha Tano Chaveru Metaltalin V'Hoda B'Miktsasan V'Kofar B'Miktsasan Misha Kofar B'Kola Metaltalin. Oh, so that's category number 1. Moda B'Miktsas. Category number 2, Misha Kofar B'Kol Shetano, and he was kofar all the metaltalin that the taina. And one aid testifies against the nitba. And the Rambam says al yidei tainas vada ukfira, and a denial of the claim. Now we get to a third category of a chiyuv shvuah doraisa, and that is v'chein shomer shetoin sha'ovad davar shefkidu etzlo or nignav o meis hareza nishba. He has to take his shvuah. Now, in the first 2 cases of Moda B'Miktsas and Shvuas Eid Echad, the Rambam writes harelu shtei shvuos al yidei tainas vada. So you see that the Rambam clearly holds that a shvuah has to come from a tainas vada. And then we understand very well the Rambam we spoke about in Perkei Mehilchas Toim V'Nitan, that the Rambam says that ein nishba'in al tainas katan, even though there's an eid echad. Gezel, the Gazel Mibalabayis, Kovar Ramam, Shenishba Tainas Sofek. So we had the Machlokas, the Ram and the Ravid, about the case of someone who was accused to be a Gazlan, and the Balabayis, the Nigzal, is Toin and Tainas Shema. And the Rambam says that in such a case, the Eid Echad is Mechayev Shvuah, even though the Toin is a Tainas Shema. And the Ravid disagrees. And what is the Rambam's lumdus here? What is the conceptual breakthrough of the principle that the Rambam is operating with? That through the ha'ada of Eid Echad, nefchat vias balabayis, mitainas safik l'tainas vada. The Eid Echad upgrades the status of the taina from a tainas safik to a tainas vada. Shekain yachal atovea lomar l'didi nemon ha'ed. The tovea could say, I rely on the testimony of the witness. He's believed to me. I believe him. He's nemon b'enai. And therefore, my claim is a claim of vada. I'm absolutely certain and sure that the Eid Echad is testifying truthfully. So that's because the case of the Rambam here in Hilchas Toin V'Nitan Perkei, that's a case of a gadol. A gadol has a taina. So when he relies on the Eid Echad, his taina is upgraded to that of a tainas bari, a tainas vada. But in the case of a katan, The Rambam would agree that the Eidecha cannot be Mechayev Shvua because the Katan is not a bar hochi of a taina. He doesn't have a taina. So even if he relies on the Eidecha, it doesn't generate a taina because he's a Katan. He's mufka from a Chal Shem taina. So let's see if we can summarize. According to Tosfos, as we have it, an Eid Echad is Mechayev Shvua without any taina at all, even in the case of a Katan. The Ravid Shita is that Eid Echad is Mechayev Shvua only in a tainas Barid. The Rambam holds that even in a tainas Shema, an Eid Echad is Mechayev a Shvua because the tainas Shema is upgraded to the status for tainas Barid. And the Eid Echad is therefore Mechayev Shvua. But if there's no taina at all, like the case of a Katan, then the Eidus of one single Eid cannot change or generate a tainas gadol. He's a Katan. So again, even though the Rambam holds that in tainas Shema you do generate a shvua through an Eid Echad against the Ravid, but he's not going to go as far as Tosfos is concerned, and even in the case of Katan, to allow Eid Echad to be Mechayev Shvua. Why? Because there's no Chal Hashem Taina at all with regard to a Katan. So the Eid who's testifying on behalf of the Katan cannot create a taina on behalf of Katan. He could create a taina on behalf of Gadol who's a Shema, and we could upgrade the Shema to a Bari, but it doesn't work in the case of a Gabra who's mufka from taina at all, like a Katan. And Tosfos is the other extreme. Tosfos is saying that even in the case of a Katan who's a lav bar hachi of a taina, he doesn't have a chal shem taina, even so the Eid Echad totally independently could mechayev a shvua. And then we have the machlokas, the Ram and the Ravid in the case where the Eid Echad is coming to support a gadol's taina of a taina shema. There's a third category of a shomer, and that was shvua shomer. And a shomer has to take a shvua when he claims that the object was lost or stolen. Okay. So now let's see if we can finish up this Tosfos. So we're up to the second of the wide lines. V'im tomar heichnis gaya. The Gemara says that the case of im ein la'ish goel, where we have to check him out to see if he has any heirs, is a case of a ger katan, which means the following: since he's a ger, he doesn't have any yorshim unless he married and had children. But if he's also a katan, then we know he doesn't have children, and that's what the Torah means to say that check out an ish goel, but iyatot tzarich lachzor acher katan. So he's a ger katan. He has no halachic relatives at all, except for a possible child, but in the case of a katan, v'yadua shein lo goel. So there's a whole entity here called ger katan. V'im tomar heichnis gaya. How could a katan be misgaya? A katan counts to us for gerus. Ki amrina nami the katan isla ischia midoraisa. Israel aval ovid kocham amrina bezu neshach the keved lo osi lichal shlichus lesla ischia afilu midrabbanan. So I'm just going to take a look for a minute here and see if by chance we have here in the back of the Sif the Biurei Tosa. I just want to see if he by chance adds anything. If he doesn't, then I'll tell you what I think Tosas is asking. The Tomer Hechnis Gaira Katan. Haki Amrina Nami the Katan is Leischia with the Raisa Hanimili Katan Yisrael. Aval Katan Ove Kacham Amrina Bezu Neshech. The Kevan de Lo Asi Lichlal Shlichus Lichshayagdil. The Goy Leslie Shlichus Klal. Leslie Schia Filu Midrabbanan. For the Bezdin Megairin as Hakatan, Hainu Midin Schia. Oh, that's what I wanted to add here to this Tosus. Let me just. He writes here, V'hod the Bezdin Megairim es Hakatan, Hainu Midin Zechia. And that's a Gemara Ksubis. Let's see. Good. Kede Isa Ksubis. Daf Yud Aleph. So again, can we do Megaira Katan? And the answer is yes. Bezdin could be Megaira Katan. How does it operate? Midin Zechia. Factosvis. A guy cannot have shlichus, and Zechia is mitam shlichus. So even though we could be zoch on behalf of Katan, but that's because he's going to eventually come into the parsha of shlichus. But in the case of a guy, there's no zoch li'adam of shlichus because the guy is completely excluded from shlichus. And therefore, so facto, he's excluded from zechia. So how could you have gerus of a katan and operate midin zachar li'adam shelo b'fanav? So wait a minute, I'm just trying to figure this out. At this point, Tosas is unaware of the Gemara in Ksubis. I mean, the Gemara in Ksubis establishes Omer Rav Huna, Ger Katan, Mat Bilin Osal Das Bezdin. Again, I have to submit to you that at this point, it seems to me that Tosfos either, I don't know if I have to go as far as say Tosfos is unaware of the Gemara in Ksubis in the name of Rav Huna. Maybe Tosfos is aware of it, but he doesn't understand the logic. How can you justify Rav Huna's position that Ger Katmat Bilno Saldas Bezdin? Because that has to work within Zechia, and a cotton can't have Zechia. Well, let me add another word. A guy katan can't have schiyah. I'm just a little uncomfortable with this. I mean, the Tosfos is asking a kasha on Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, Ger Katan Bilno Saldas Bezdin. And the Gemara says that's midin schiyah. But a Katan will never have shlichus. So maybe that's what Tosfos is going to say now. Let's see if I can fit this into the next part of Tosfos. So miu, hi kusha lav kushahi. This question about how a katan could become a ger through the principle of zachin, which is based on shlichus, that's not a kasha. Maybe he's going to say Gita v'yodaban ka'achas. Oh, look at that. Okay, I think I guessed the answer to this question. Tim Kane Tikshalon called Gerim Hechi Matbilan also. I mean, we have a principle of Gerkot Matbilan Osal Das Bezdin. That was what's bothering me b'chlal and Tosfos. Ella, notes we have no choice since we know the Gerkot Matbilan Osal Das Bezdin is Kevan dis Chiyoso v'yodo boin ki echad shiny. The Miyad, he writes, Shenasa ger yesh lo yad. Right, he could be a shliach. In ke katan nami Kevan de islay schliya midaraisa yochol lios ger. I think he means Katan Yisrael. That's what he means. So again, even though now he's a guy and he's mufka from shlichus, how can Zuchia work to make him into a ger? The answer is because he will become a Yisrael through this gerus, and then he'll have shlichus and he'll have Zuchia. So that's called Schiyasa v'yodo boin kech. Aval I Katan Leslie Schia midaraisa. I Katan Leslie Schia midaraisa. I think we had that earlier in this Tosfos, no? So again, what does it mean? Leslie Schiodorais, is he throwing out the whole shtickle Torah about Dasacheres Machne? guess there is such a the Omar. Again, we said before that Rav Chizda and Rav Asi had a debate about being Zochel Lacherim. But Liatzmo, certainly he could be Zochel. Okay, that's a point that has to be just clarified a little bit, but it's not earth shattering. There is a Mandi Omer who says that Katan does not have a Schiyah Dorais, it's only Dirabona. And on a Dorais level, we're going to say the Katan can't have a Shliach, and therefore you can't be Zocha on behalf of the Katan. Because to be Zocha on behalf of the Katan would mean that you're operating as his Shliach, and a Katan cannot have Shlichus. So therefore you can't have Zchiyah, and the principle of Zocha Li'adam means Li'ish, Li'gadol, but not Zocha Li'katan. So again, we're not sure who holds this way right now, but that's a kind of a technical issue. So Vada Yikshe. Hech Nizgayer. How can we have a Gerus on a Deraisa level of a Katan if Gerus of a Katan is based on Zochel Yadam? This man, the Omer holds that Zochel Katan is only a Derabana. Imo kishehimu uberes. Kinamriya beperka orel yivamastaf ayin ches the eshes oved kochavim uberes in his gaira b'na ein tzarch tvila. Sure exactly why he has to say Eshes Oved Kochavim. Why didn't he just say, Ovedes Kochavim Me'uberes? I don't know why he has to introduce the father into the picture. Anyway, so she now undergoes gerus. She's a pregnant woman. Is Bina Ein Tzarch Tvila. The fact that she was Hora b'kedusha. Well, actually, the Hora was Shalom b'kedusha, but the Leda was b'kedusha, so the child is already considered a Jew. So he's assuming that this child is a ger, I guess, right? I mean, you could have said that maybe the child, since it's leidasa v'kedusha, I think he's saying here that the tvila of the mother is effective even for the embryo. Yeah, but that's because the embryo is part of the mother's body. Is that enough to satisfy Tosus's need here? No, wait a minute. Ger Katan mat bilinos al das bezdin. It's our pasuk that we're talking about in the parsha of Shvua Sheker, etc., of Keren v'Chomesh and Karban Asham, specifically speaks about a ger katan. So there must be on a deraisa level a ger katan. How do you accept a ger katan? We're holding now the katan less leischia midaraisa. So there's no zachin liyadam on behalf of a katan on a deraisa level. But Tosas says in a case where she, the mother, underwent gerus while she was pregnant, then the child is considered a ger katan when he's born, when the embryo is born. The efshar hashta, the achri chen yoreshes imo. Ooh. Tosas thinks that after the child is born, he will be the heir to his mother. See what he says here? Efshar hashta achri chen yoreshes imo. Now, wait a second. We have a principle that Gershon is Garka Katan Shenol Adami. So he's not related to any of his biological relatives. Why is he Yoreshes Imo? This doesn't give us a clue. Somehow the Gerus of the mother, when she's pregnant, is Chal even vis-a-vis the child. And therefore they together, as mother and child, undergo gerus, and now in that case, the child is related to his mother, and he inherits her when she dies. Now, if he inherits her, then we understand later on if somebody steals the katan's money and takes a shvua to deny it, and then he confesses it, that's the parasha of Keren v'Chomesh. Even though he's a ger and he's a katan, but he has relatives, and therefore he has mammon. So that would be a case where so wait a minute. Oh, but if now let's say the katan dies, so who will inherit the katan when he dies? Or are we saying that he's related to his mother and therefore he definitely has Yarshin? know there's a long footnote here in the Masifta about this. All right, I think we'll stop here. And we're up to Umiu Kasha. Let's just make a note of it so we don't forget where we're up to. Umiu Kasha. All right then. So let me take this opportunity to wish you a great Shabbos.
You too.
Okay, thank you so much. Shabbat shalom.